All right, I'm calling the May 12, 2020 regular Planning and Zoning Commission meeting to order. And I'm first going to do roll call. Commissioner Christensen. Commissioner Christensen.
Present.
Commissioner Benavides.
Present.
Commissioner Park.
I'm here.
Commissioner Seavey.
Present.
Commissioner Gay.
Here.
Commissioner Berenson.
Present.
Commissioner Eby, I'm here. Let the record reflect that a quorum is present for the meeting. And the first item that we need to address is amending the resolution that we adopted at our last in-person meeting. It's Resolution 2020-4, Rules for the Transaction of Business. And these are located at pages 5 through 11 of the meeting packet. The reason we're doing this is because we're having our first ever online, not in-person meeting, and some of our rules have to be changed to reflect. So is there any discussion from the commission about the amendment to this rule? Commissioner Christensen, any discussion?
No, ma'am.
Question? Commissioner Benavides?
No discussion. We lost Lynn.
I think we lost Lynn. We'll give her a second.
Then your video went dark.
I just have the Village of Los Ranchos, the Albuquerque, a small little.
There she is.
Sorry,
Okay.
I had a call coming in on my phone and it was interfering with. Commissioner Gay?
No.
Discussion, Commissioner Berenson?
No.
Okay. Is there a motion?
I move to approve Resolution 2020-04, Rules for the Transaction of Business.
I second that.
And was that you, Commissioner Christensen, that made the motion? I'm sorry, I didn't.
Yes, it was.
Okay. Commissioner Christensen moved to approve, and Commissioner Benavides?
Yes.
Seconded? Okay. I'm gonna do a roll call on this instead of just calling out our votes. Commissioner Christensen, how do you vote?
Approve.
Commissioner Benavides?
Yes to approve.
Commissioner Park?
Yes.
Commissioner Seavey?
Aye.
Commissioner Gay?
Yes.
Commissioner Berenson?
Yes.
And I also vote aye. The motion carries unanimously. All right. We're trying out a new format here, so I hope it will go well. And I see that we have some screen sharing happening here. So our next item is approval of the agenda, and the agenda can be found at pages 1 to 3 of the packet. Director Justice, are there any changes to the agenda?
There are no changes.
Move approval of the agenda, Madam Chair.
Can you identify yourself when you make the motion? Because if I don't recognize your voice and I'm not looking at you.
Sure, sorry. Al Park moving to approve the
Okay.
agenda.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Is there a second?
Dan Gay, second.
Okay. Commissioner Park has moved approval of the agenda. Commissioner Gay seconded. Commissioner Christensen, how do you vote? Yay or nay?
Yay.
Commissioner Benavides?
Yay.
Commissioner Park?
Yes.
Commissioner Seavey?
Yes.
Commissioner Gay?
Yes.
Commissioner Berenson?
Yay.
And I also vote yay on the motion. Motion carries unanimously. The next item is the public comment period. Residents may address the Planning and Zoning Commission to comment on issues, problems, or successes on topics that do not appear on the agenda elsewhere. Audience members will be given an opportunity to comment on agenda items as they come up. Speakers must register with the village staff prior to the beginning of the meeting. If you're an individual with a disability who's in need of a reader, amplifier, or qualified sign language interpreter, or any other form of auxiliary aid or service to attend or participate in the hearing or meeting, please contact the village clerk 1 week prior to the meeting or as soon as possible. Can I ask our IT specialist, do we have any members of the public who have signed up to speak in public comment?
We don't currently. Tiffany, did you want to do anything different about that?
So if there is anyone who does wish to speak at this time who did not sign up, please identify yourself by raising your hand as a attendee, and we will get you in.
I have Julie Dwyer and David Newman who have both raised their hand. So, Julie Dwyer and Julie, I will promote you now to be a panelist, and when you become a panelist, if you can make sure your audio is unmuted and your video is available.
Oh, and Julie, if you could state your name and address for the record as well.
We'll give her.
My name is Julie Dwyer. My address is 508 Ortega Northwest, Los Ranchos, 87114.
Go ahead, Ms. Dwyer. What's your comment?
Yes, well, I'm attending the meeting because I understand that there is a discussion that is going to take place in regards to the property next door to me this evening.
Okay. The public comment period is for people who are speaking on items that are not on the regular agenda. So if you wish to speak on that item, that is one of our public hearings that you'll have an opportunity to speak at a later time when that comes on the agenda.
Okay, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Newman, are you there?
Stand by. Mr. Newman lowered his hand. Mr. Newman, if you still
Okay.
wish to talk in the public comments, could you please raise your hand? If not, we will move on.
So Mr. Newman, if you want to speak about an item that's on the agenda that will come up later, you may do so.
Mr. Newman has not raised his hand again. As of now,
Okay.
there's no else requesting for public comment.
Okay. Okay, we're going to move on to the next item, which is the consent agenda. All matters listed under the consent agenda are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. We only have one item on the consent agenda, and that's the approval of the minutes of the March 10, 2020 regular meeting. And those minutes appear at pages 14 to 17 of the meeting packet. Are there any comments or corrections from any of the commissioners on the minutes of the meeting in March?
No.
Okay, hearing none. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Yeah,
Madam
go ahead. You go ahead, Karen.
Sorry,
Christensen,
Madam Chair, this is Karen Christensen.
thank you.
Move that we approve the minutes from the March 10, 2020 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, so.
And still Benavides.
Yes. Commissioner Christensen moved approval of the agenda. Commissioner Benavides seconded. And I'm going to again call for a roll call vote. Commissioner Christensen,
Yay.
Commissioner Benavides,
Yay.
Commissioner Park,
Abstain because I was not present at the meeting.
okay. Commissioner Seavey,
Aye.
Commissioner Gay,
Yes.
Commissioner Berenson,
Yay.
and Commissioner Eby votes yay also. The motion carries unanimously with the exception of Commissioner Park, who abstained because he was not present. All right. Moving right along to public hearings and applications. The speakers on all of these three items that we're considering tonight will be sworn in individually before speaking. When you're called upon to speak, please state your name, address, and then wait to be sworn in by Attorney Winter before giving your statements. So the first item is SDP 20-01, a request by David Montoya for preliminary review and recommendation to the Board of Trustees of a commercial site development plan for a redevelopment in the 4th Street corridor and character area. Property is located at 506 Ortega Road Northwest, 8831 4th Street Northwest, and 8833 4th Street Northwest. 506 Ortega Road and 8831 4th Street are legally known as lots A and B, lands of Wendell Scarborough, section 16 T11N R3E NMPM, as projected into the town of Alameda Grant, Bernalillo County, New Mexico, filed in the office of the Bernalillo County Clerk on November 21, 1984. 8831 4th Street is legally known as a certain tract of land known and described as Tract 193, as shown on map number 24 of the Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District, located within section 16 T11N R3E NMPM, as projected into the Alameda Grant, Bernalillo County, New Mexico. The properties contain 0.333, 0.3636, and 0.17 acres more or less, respectively. Attorney Winter, please swear in Director Tiffany Justice.
I will
Justice,
bring
please
in-
raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Director Justice, may we have the planning report, please?
Yes, Commissioners, this project is an addition, open side canopy and portal that will be built and added to an existing building. The primary use of this building is going to be a combination of office space and commercial storage. The property has been used as a contractor's yard in the past, and this is a point of discussion in our analysis. A sketch plat review already occurred administratively during the subdivision process. The applicant is in the process of subdividing this property to alter the lot lines at 506 Ortega Road, which currently goes between the building that will be added to. This sketch plat was approved on January 22nd, 2020. The surrounding area is a combination of commercial C1 zoning, R2 residential, and special use planned residential community Ortega compound. The Village C1 zone allows for no side setback when a lot does not abut a residentially zoned property. The west side does abut a residentially zoned property, and the closest structure to that lot line is beyond the setback requirement. So it complies with that. The main point of discussion for this application is the use as a contractor's yard. Construction yards and commercial storage facilities are conditional use in the C1 zone. And the applicant has stated that the property is legally non-conforming as a contractor's yard as it's maintained that status since it was annexed into Los Ranchos. There is a little bit of conflicting information on the status of that contractor's yard. As a legally non-conforming use, the contractor's yard would need to not be discontinued for more than 180 days. So they would need to be continuing that operation pretty continuously over the course of the last several decades. So in terms of the conflicting evidence, the satellite images show various states of the property, either with vehicles outside or no vehicles. However, there's also been some statements that say that there was operation inside the building. So just because there isn't any storage of vehicles outside doesn't mean that there wasn't any storage of vehicles inside. There also is a statement from one of the renters at one of the other buildings, Javier Cardenas, that there was occupation continuously from 2001 to 2016. However, this occupation was for a business that we do not have a business license for, and we don't have any reference to the owner or the business. So there's a little bit of conflicting evidence there. There's also a special use file, special use 96-02 for the property, which did indicate this as a contractor's yard as a non-conforming use. There's also a handwritten note on that file that notes that it is vacated. And there's also a note in our Excel database that it is vacated. However, these are the only notes that indicate that this non-conforming use has been vacated. And so due to the contradicting information that we have on file for the property, we have that the legally non-conforming use was vacated. Therefore, we recommend that the applicant apply for the conditional use permit, and they already have the historical background to support this use. This will also remove the legally non-conforming requirement that the use not be discontinued for more than 180 days, which will allow for breaks between tenants or operation without questioning the use as is being done right now. In terms of other site plan criteria, the design of the addition appears to comply with our design regulations as it's northern New Mexico style. The number of parking spaces and ADA parking spaces is met, and most of this parking is existing. However, while the number is met, the dimensions are slightly off. So we require that parking be 9 feet by 20 feet for each space. However, these parking spaces are noted as a half foot too narrow, as 8.5 by 20 feet. However, this is still adequate for a car to park. It's just not our requirement. And this parking is existing and isn't being altered with the site development plan. This parking has already existed and cars have successfully parked there. Another issue with expanding this parking is that it would cut into the existing landscaping, and that would reduce their compliance with the landscaping requirement. So there's a bit of a trade-off with landscaping and parking. Landscaping is met to the extent possible, given the other development constraints, such as access and parking, and most of this landscaping is existing. The grading and drainage plan has been reviewed by the village designated engineer, and their comments are included in the packet. However, all of the ponding appears to be on one of the lots, and the other lot does not have any ponding or drainage interventions. Either this other lot needs to have its own ponding or drainage interventions, or permission must be granted through a shared drainage easement on the subdivision plat for the lot that doesn't have drainage to be able to use the other lot's drainage. And this will need to be done before final approval of the site development plan. In terms of lighting, there is a light pole on the west side of the property that will need to comply with the dark skies ordinance. The specifications included by the applicant appear to comply. And the other proposed uses on this site plan are compliant with the C1 zone, as retail and office are permissive uses. No signs appear to be on the building with the proposed addition, and no additional signage is proposed. Mailbox locations aren't shown, but are required to be accessible by the postal service. There don't appear to be any proposed bike racks. Details are shown, but the location on the site are not. And for the grading and drainage plan, this will need to be corrected by the final approval of the site development plan. Loading and docking areas are not specified, but they do appear to be available on the site along the north and west sides of the proposed addition. And refuse is currently disposed of in existing residential rollout cans, so a dumpster is not required and it's not noted on the site. In terms of landscaping, as I mentioned before, there's a bit of a trade-off with parking requirements, and most of this landscaping is existing. Only a little bit of it will be added. As this is a corner lot, 20% of the site is required to be landscaped, and the landscaping requirement is met to the extent possible on the undeveloped portion of the site. In terms of utilities, the property currently has access to water and sewer, and a fire hydrant exists on the north side of the property. So aside from the question of the contractor's yard, the site development plan primarily, for the most part, complies with the site development plan requirements, and what is not currently met is noted to be corrected for the final approval at the Board of Trustees. So with that, the Planning and Zoning Department recommends the Commission forward to the Board of Trustees a recommendation to approve the site development plan with the following conditions. First, the applicant must apply for a conditional use for a construction yard and commercial storage facility. The conditional use must be obtained prior to approval of the final plat, or the use of the building must change and be noted on the final plat. The Npdes grading and drainage plan must be corrected per the village designated engineer's review for approval of the final site development plan. The grading and drainage plan must provide drainage and ponding on lot B1, or the subdivision plat must allow for shared drainage between the two lots through a drainage easement. Bicycle racks must be shown on the site plan, or the bicycle rack detail must be deleted. Any future signage must comply with the sign ordinance, and sign permits must be obtained. Exterior lighting must comply with the dark skies ordinance. The final site development plan must show mailboxes or indicate how mail will be received. The final site development plan must meet Bernalillo County Fire Department requirements. Construction shall meet all current village, county, and state codes. And the final site development plan must be executed by the applicant with the findings that it is in compliance with the master plan, and the development also meets the requirements of the C1 retail commercial zone. Public notice requirements have been met, and also with that, the applicant is welcome to disagree with the department's recommendation, and the commission could also forward a recommendation of approval without condition number 1, depending on interpretation of the legally non-conforming use. So with that, I stand for any questions.
Are there any questions from the commissioners for Planner Justice?
Yes, and maybe the applicant would be better suited to answer the question. But Tiffany, so there are two lots, lot A and B. There are three addresses, and there are three different acreages. So I'm assuming one of those lots contain two addresses. And I couldn't really break out what, you know, the two versus the three in any of the diagrams, if you know what I mean.
Right. So Commissioner Benavides, commissioners, there are three buildings on the site. Currently, there are two lots, one lot with two buildings and one lot with one building. Sorry, I misspoke. So right now, the applicant is in the middle of subdividing the property. So until that subdivision is complete, there are three different lots with three buildings on three different addresses. The proposed subdivision will remove one of those lot lines to combine into one lot. So there will be one lot with two buildings and one lot with one building. So in total, it's a little bit confusing just because they're in the middle of the process, but there's three buildings, technically three lots, and eventually there will be two lots.
Okay, it's just even looking at the illustrations, you know, I get it that there currently are three different parcels but three different buildings, but look, none of the diagrams outline where those divisions are for the three. I know where they want to go, but I just don't know where they are today. But maybe when we look at the diagrams, that can become clearer. With next
So if you look on page 35 of your packet, it shows basically the three different lot lines. And then there's also three different buildings. And currently there's a lot line that goes between one of the buildings. So that lot line that currently goes between one of the buildings will be removed with the new subdivision plat. Yes, Commissioner Park.
Okay.
Any other questions, Commissioner Benavides?
No, I think I see that.
Any other commissioners that have questions for Director Justice? I have a couple questions. You say in your report that the sketch plat was approved January 22. Was that by this commission or was that administratively?
Commissioner Eby, commissioners, that was a administratively approved sketch plat, as that requirement is also a requirement of our subdivision platting process. So as they had already done that with the subdivision plat, they're moving forward with the preliminary site development plan.
Okay. And my other question is the parking spaces, are they going to need a variance to have the parking spaces a little bit narrower than our regulations provide?
So you could approve the site development plan as is with the 8.5 foot by 20 foot parking spaces, as it is a bit of a trade-off between the landscaping requirement and the parking requirement. By expanding those spaces, they would need to cut into the planters, which would reduce the landscaping. And so it's a bit of a trade-off at this point, and considering they are existing, I don't believe they would need a variance going forward.
Okay. Any other questions from the commissioners? Okay, is the applicant present?
Chair Eby, I have a question.
Oh, sorry.
Excuse me.
Commissioner Seavey.
Well, Director Justice, it appears to be a single-family residence just south of the property. Can you speak to that? And will the buffering requirements be met? And this could be a question for the owner.
Sorry. So Commissioner Seavey, are you talking about the single family residence that is to the east or the west? There's one building that they actually, building kind of crosses the property line. The one in the middle? Is it the
Yeah.
one on the left or the right?
I'm thinking about the property that is adjacent to this project to the south. So one lot down across that alleyway, it appears to be a residence. If you were to go south on 4th Street.
I will defer to the applicant at this point.
Okay, that's fine.
Any other questions from the commissioners for Director Justice?
Sorry.
Yes.
I do have an answer for you, Commissioner Seavey. So that requirement for buffer is for commercial and residentially zoned properties, regardless of the actual use within it. So the property to the south is zoned commercial, so there is no buffer requirement.
Excellent, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, is the applicant present?
They are present. I will be promoting them now up to panelists. So Eric Munn and David Montoya, I will be promoting you. And if you guys can make sure you're unmuted when you're promoted, and if you want to be on video, that you take your video as well, please. Stand by.
Hello,
Could you state your name and address for the record, please?
I'm David Montoya, and Pam Montoya is with me. Oh, and my address is 8831 4th, or are you talking about for the property address, or, I'm
For
sorry.
your residential address.
Oh, 517 Pueblo Solano.
Okay. Attorney Winter, please swear in Mr. Montoya.
David, we can't see you, but I'm going to ask you to raise your right hand and swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Do you so swear?
I do.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Montoya, would you like to say some things about your application?
Well, nice to meet everybody. Thank you for hosting this. And but I would say that we are in agreement with everything that Tiffany has come up with, except for the exception of one thing. We've always kept a construction yard there, not only for my construction company as a satellite office, but also we also rented the building in the back for a counter for a company called Counterintelligence. So it's always been that way since we purchased that property in 1981, and we've had a construction yard there. And when the village took it over, I did go walking door to door to help Alfredo Garcia to connect these areas. And I signed up. I mean, this doesn't really matter to all this, but what I was told when we were annexed, that we could always be a construction yard. And now I'm being told that, hey, after 180 days, without notice, somebody can tell us that you've vacated it. And that doesn't seem in keeping with the original agreement. And it seems to be based on the fact that there's some handwritten note that sounds, I don't know if it's dated, signed, or anything. But that doesn't seem to be a fair way to handle us that we've been in the village from the very beginning. If they're going to take away our construction yard, the village should gone ahead and said, hey, we hereby vacate your use of construction yard. That would be, to me, friendly and a way to keep a way of doing this. But here we signed up willingly to be part of the village, to bring in commercial properties so that the village could increase their tax base. We do provide a tax base to the village there and have been. And so I don't think it's nice and not right that this was done. But getting back to the point, we agree with everything else that Tiffany's talking about. And I'm glad that one of the commissioners asked about the building to the south. They are C1, and I have met with Tom Demas, the neighbor. We've been neighbors since we moved there. But at any rate, we're gonna build together a wall separating us. Right now we have a wall that separates us. We're gonna increase it in the back. So for your knowledge, Commissioner, we're gonna make it taller so that there is no, because they are C1, but they do, they have rentals there. So we're sensitive to that. And also 95% of the business that or work that we do there are inside the buildings. That's why nobody knows we're there. It's all inside. One's been a welding shop, one's been a fabricating shop, one's been a mechanic shop. We've done all those things, and we do them indoors. And what we're doing with this entire addition is to be able to do more things indoors. We're making large doorways in order to accommodate all our vehicles, so everything will be out of sight, and even better than it is right now. Things are out of sight, they're behind the fences. We're sensitive to the neighbors. So I've supported everything the village has done, including changing the zoning across the street. They brought in the housing across the street, much smaller than the original requirements that were required with the village. But the village again annexed the property across the road on Ortega. So we're willing to do anything. I agree with everything too that Tiffany's done, and they've done a great deal amount of work. But we're ready to move forward, and I think we can see things better than it has been. And not that what we have done is bad in any way. I don't know if Pam has anything more to say. But counterintelligence, we have mailers from them, and I gave those to Tim McDonough. They had mail coming to them, and they still do actually for counterintelligence. So, and what they built is concrete countertops. All that work was done inside. The only thing you would hear would be an exhaust fan that would go on when they would sand or buff the countertops. Does anyone else have questions?
Well, let's see if, did Pamela want to make a statement or?
Sure.
Okay, please state your name and address, and you'll be sworn by the attorney.
Pamela Montoya, 517 Pueblo Solano Northwest.
Okay, Miss Pamela, we can't see you, but could you please raise your right hand, and do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
So I'm married to David, and we, like he said, we bought the property in the 80s before it was village. We had our construction company there for many, many years, actively there. Like he said, we had a welding shop in there. We did a lot of things inside. For a time, we had a lot of company vehicles in the yard. We did move to another location outside of the village because we got too, you know, it was too crowded for us there. We still kept part of the building for storage, and we rented part of that building to a company called Counterintelligence. Like he said, they did concrete countertops. I believe he did concrete countertops, you know, throughout New Mexico. I don't know exactly what locations. I didn't get into his business, but he did very nice concrete work anyway. When they moved out, we decided to put more of our vehicles there and other equipment inside, and decided it would be nice to have a canopy and remodel the existing building. So the short story is that we have been there since the 80s as a construction company. Nothing's ever changed. And Tiffany, I noticed she said something about that it was vacated, and I don't know what that exactly means, but we didn't vacate it. And if you vacated it, I would, like David said, it would be nice to know when and why, and we should have been notified. And that's all I have to say. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Okay, is Mr. Mann, are you there as a contractor, or?
I am the agent. I'm the architect.
Okay, can you state your name and address for the record and be sworn by the?
Yes, I'm Eric Munn, architect and agent for David Montoya. My address 717 Cogwood Drive Northeast, Albuquerque 87108.
Mr. Munn, could you please raise your right hand?
Yes.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Munn.
Yes, like as David mentioned, we both concur with the items 2 through 10. Actually, on the parking, we could probably expand those. We have some space to expand the parking spaces to 9 feet wide. So we could probably do that and concur with all the rest of the items. We can amend those for the final site development. Just on the number 1 about the construction yard, that was something that I had David talk to Tim McDonough while Tim was still there at length. And it seemed like they had come to an agreement that it was going to be okay to be grandfathered in. That's kind of why we went past the conditional use and went right into the site development and the replat. So that's kind of what we were under the impression and why we proceeded that way. And that's all that I really had to say about that.
Okay. So is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak in favor of this application? I think there was someone who started to speak earlier.
Nobody is currently raising their hand.
Dwyer.
Before we get to other comments, can I ask the commissioners if you have any questions for the applicants or their agent?
The chairperson, EB.
Commissioner Gay?
I'm a little confused on the sticking point of the conditional use. David, Mr. Montoya, you said are you saying that you will only go through with this process if you're not asked to apply for a conditional use for the contractor's yard? I'm a little confused. It almost makes it sound like it's an option. I want to clear that up in my mind.
Oh, no, this is David. What I'm saying is that I don't think I don't think we should be required to go to a conditional use. The village took us in the way we were and promised to keep what we have, to allow us to stay. And if that was going to be taken away after your annexation, we should be notified. It just doesn't seem fair or right. And that's my point. But we do agree with everything else. We want to be great neighbors. It's just the fact is that I don't want or don't think we should be required to come up with a conditional use. The problem with conditional use Commissioner, is that later on there might be another board such as yourself, but a different board, and then they will come up with other conditions. That's what happens with conditional uses. I've seen it happen, and you are not acting as contrary, but there are bureaucracies that come up, and it gets to be challenging to handle it. I prefer to stay with the arrangement we had from the beginning. I haven't changed. The village still there, and that was the agreement. I just don't think if you're going to take away something from us, we should be notified. It's just not right. And I don't know what 6 months they're talking about that we were not in there, and nobody even told me or sent out letters or anything that said, hey, you have 6 months, you must keep this continuous operation for 6 months. But that seems arbitrary to me, but maybe it's a policy of the village. I just don't know. I've never even heard of such a thing.
So, but what I'm reading here is that the planning director recommends approval with the following conditions, and that is one of the conditions that he has stated. So is that something you're willing to accept, or?
Well, Commissioner, I hope I didn't cut you off, but she also said that you have the authority to eliminate that condition, because she's agreed with everything, but she tossed in this wants me to go for a conditional approval. And yes, I do object to that and think it's unnecessary and should not be required. But she did say you have that approved, that you have that authority as a board.
So I guess I must have missed that where we had the authority. Is that what, Tiffany, is that your?
Yes, so Commissioner Gay, yes, commissioners can approve the item. They can approve the item with conditions, and they can approve with amendments and say with all conditions except for number 1 or number 7.
But you are sticking to the way you wrote it, is that you would recommend it for approval, but not with waiving the conditional use. You've submitted it to be as part, just the way you've written it. Does that make sense?
So yes, my recommendation is to make one of the conditions that they get a conditional use for a contractor's yard. The main reason for it is because there is a lack of evidence on our part as to whether or not they've continued that use. However, both Montoyas did state under oath that they have maintained this non-conforming use continuously. It's a matter of our records. We have no record of that.
That's a good question.
Okay, thank you.
Who has a question? Commissioner Park, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm not sure if this is a question for the applicant or for Tiffany. I understand that the property was brought into the village as a legally non-conforming property, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And then the basis for the conditional use requirement under your recommendation number 1 is that there's a lack of evidence that it was in continuous occupation and that it may have been abandoned for the 180-day period. Is that right?
Yes.
What 180-day period do we think it was abandoned or not utilized under the prior non-conforming use that it came into the village?
So let's see. Sorry, if you can give me one moment.
Yes, please. Thank you.
In terms of the letters that the applicants had provided, they mentioned that they moved in 2001, and they also mentioned that Joseph was there until 2016. They did ask him to sign a lease in 2007. However, we don't know that he necessarily moved in 2001 or 2002, depending on when that was vacated. And the other letters do mention that he was operating in 2006 and also in 2007. However, that period in between 2001 and 2006 is unknown at this point.
Okay, thank you, Tiffany. I appreciate that, Madam Planner. Can I ask a question? Lynn, looks like you want to ask something today.
No, you go ahead. I do have some questions, but go ahead, Commissioner Park.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I suspect you and I are on the same page. So looking at that time period from 2001 to 2006, and I guess my question is for the applicant. The records in the documents do support that they left the property around that time. Who utilized the property during that period from 2001 to 2006?
This is David. Go ahead.
Well, I'd like to address that. This is Pam Montoya.
Okay.
So when we vacated, our son-in-law at the time moved in, and because he was our son-in-law, we let him, we didn't sign a lease with him, basically, because he was our son-in-law. And so he operated. Unfortunately, he and my daughter divorced, and we decided that we would like to get some paper trail, paperwork, and so we asked him to sign a lease. I'm at home and I don't have those documents with me, but I believe I sent copies of some things that I had.
We have the lease.
Okay. Anyway, so that's what happened. We were very lax. He moved in. He operated his business, and it wasn't until later that we asked him to sign a lease. So really, I have no proof. We still get mail for his business, and I could bring those to the village if you wanted to see that mail. It's mostly junk mail. But nevertheless, it shows his name and the name of his company.
And that's the counterintelligence?
Yes.
And you said it was a kitchen counter company?
He did concrete countertops, whether it was kitchen or
patios.
Yeah, like
kitchen, outdoor kitchen patios.
yeah, things like that. Custom concrete.
Does counterintelligence still continue to operate at this
I
time?
have no idea.
Okay.
He and my daughter divorced, and I don't follow what he does or doesn't do.
I understand.
I can add something. He did work at the hotel downtown in.
Who is this speaking, please? Could you identify yourself? We can't.
This is David Montoya.
David Montoya, thank you.
He also did work for the old hotel downtown when they remodeled that in 2002.
Oh, that was the.
He did work at the Hyatt, and he did work. So he did a lot of work in the city of Albuquerque. He did work in Taos. He did work all over. Go ahead.
And I'm sorry to interrupt you, sir. So my question is between 2001 and 2006, did your son-in-law, I believe his name is Joseph Austin, continuously operate, and was he in possession of the property and utilizing it for his construction business that entire time?
Yes.
And when did he leave the property?
When did he leave?
I think 2014.
I honestly don't remember. I don't have those papers here, but I don't remember. But I think I submitted it.
Thank you. And who took over the property after he vacated it?
And that's the thing I want you to know, is that he didn't use all the property. I continued to use it. And we had a rental upstairs, but there's different little buildings inside that back building at 8831.
Yes, I've seen the pictures.
Yeah, I continued to use that, never stopped using that since we moved we moved out most of our operations, but we never abandoned that place ever. And so after I left, we rented a time to Javier. And Javier has been in there, and Javier was doing a lot of types of some types of, not remodeling, I guess he would do rustic furniture refinishing, but he took over the same building that I was in.
Portion of it.
A portion of it, but Joseph was in the back. So we have never abandoned that building.
Is Javier still on that site, or
Yeah.
is he no longer there?
No, he's there. He has called
A few old things.
A Few Old Things.
And he's been there continuously since 2014?
No, he's been there since
He's been there about 11 years.
14. He's been there 14 years.
Oh.
He's been there 14 years this year.
Wow.
So, Mr. Montoya and Ms. Montoya, my question is the space that was occupied by counterintelligence and Mr. Austin, what happened to that space when he vacated it?
I moved more of my stuff back in there. I'm in there. So if you come down and look, you can see all the construction tools and equipment that I have. I have a forklift in there. I have welders. I have MIG, TIG welders, 2 different types. I've got a crane.
So Mr. Montoya, I'm sorry to interrupt you again, but are you using the space for storage, or is it exclusively for storage?
No, I use it for both.
What's the other use you use it for?
Well, I also use, in the back, I have farm equipment back there too.
But that's all storage, right?
No, well, I work on the equipment as well, but I guess we store them there when we're not working on them.
Right, but then you work on the equipment. You're not manufacturing or constructing anything at that site.
Well, we build things. We make things. We fabricate things. We do what's needed to be done for the equipment. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate your indulgence. I have no more further questions at this time.
Well, I have a question, and I think this is going to be addressed to our Director Justice. Is the point that that building may have been used, but not as a contractor's yard? I think that the Montoyas have established that the building has been used, but aren't we talking about the contractor's yard? And how is that different?
Commissioner Eby, commissioners. So we, our definition of a contractor's yard is specifically for outdoor storage. However, when they annexed into Los Ranchos, they have stated that they were operating inside the building. So even though our definition is specifically for outdoor use, it appears to have carried over into the building, at least with its initial adoption into the village. Does that answer your question?
I guess so. I have another question about what is the effect of the business that was there, the counterintelligence, not being registered with the village? How does that affect their contractor yard special use?
It appears that the use was still operating. It's just more of a concern on our end for business licensing purposes to make sure that the business is operating with a license. However, as the Montoyas stated, that he has done work in other parts of New Mexico, he must have at least a New Mexico state tax and rev business license. So he was operating. He did not have a Los Ranchos business license, but the use was still existing. We don't require with the use in our non-conforming use ordinance that it be tied to a business of any kind, just that the use continue. But it does make it harder on our end to establish that he was there during that time or not, because right now we don't have a record that he was there.
Right. And then this is a question for the attorney. In a situation like this, where the village is saying there isn't evidence of continuous use, who has the burden of proof? Does the village have to prove that there wasn't continuous use, or does the applicant have to prove that there was?
Madam Chair, I don't think it's a burden necessarily. And I think this is maybe what Mr. Park was getting to, was trying to determine whether or not you have enough facts in front of you to decide whether or not there was continuous use. You have Miss Justice telling you she just doesn't know. And then you have Mr. Park kind of doing a little bit of cross-examination. And then you have Mr. and Mrs. Montoya telling you there is continuous use under oath. So it's really an issue for the fact finder, and you are the fact finder.
We are the fact finder.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any other commissioners that have questions for the applicants or their agent?
Madam Chair, this is Kiko with IT. I have somebody raising their hand that wishes to speak.
Yeah, I'll get on to people that want to speak for and against, but I'm asking now if there are any of the commissioners that have further questions of either the director or the applicants.
Yeah, let me ask a question. I'd like to follow up on the business license issue. So when that property with the business was annexed into the village, was there not a notification that they needed to be licensed for business in the village? And were the Montoyas unaware that they needed a license?
So I don't know if there was a mailing sent out or a notification of any kind. We do have note from the director at that time about the non-conforming use. They have a memorandum that was filed that's in your packet. However, there is no record of us asking them to have a business license or notifying them that they need to have a business license.
Okay. And a license would have established continuous use then, right?
Yes.
Okay.
at least it's one way to establish
One-
continuous use.
Okay. That's it.
Any other questions from the commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Park.
Sorry, trying to unmute. But to follow up on Commissioner Benavidez's question to Ms. Justice, while a license would have established continuous use, the absence of a license does not establish that there was not continuous use. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Sorry for all the multiple double negatives.
Right. There's some other evidence that notes that, like I mentioned, the handwritten note, which I understand does not put the most faith in that note, but that is the record that we had found, and that is pretty much what we have on the property.
And this is Commissioner Eby. Wasn't there a letter from the former director, McDonough? I can't find it in my paperwork. Was that on this?
Yeah, on page 99 of our packet.
99, okay. Because the applicant said that they thought that he was favorable to it, but the letter, and this was December 2, 2019. He says, my determination was that the legally non-conforming use had been abandoned by virtue of no use for more than 180 days. And he prepared a letter with exhibits for Mr. Montoya with that decision. So this isn't a new issue that Planner Justice came up with.
No, but former Director McDonough did mention at the end of his letter that they could provide more proof of that continued use, and that would help to establish whether or not they were operating. He mentions the satellite images as part of the evidence. Again, the Montoyas have already established that they were operating inside the building, so unfortunately, that's not necessarily an indicator whether or not there was or was not activity. But basically, I believe at this point the Montoyas are providing more evidence than what was there originally presented to Director McDonough.
Okay. Any other questions of the applicant or the planning director by the commissioners? Okay, then we'll move on to, is there anyone present in the audience who wishes to speak in favor of this application?
I don't
This will
have
take a
any
minute.
whether they want to speak in favor or against. I only know if they want to speak.
And is this Ms. Dwyer and Mr. Newman?
Ms. Dwyer, yes.
Okay. Ms. Dwyer, are you there?
I have to put it on. Give me 1 second, please. Ms. Dwyer?
This is Julie Dwyer.
Yes, and Ms. Dwyer, are you here to speak in favor of or in opposition to the application here?
Well, I'm here to speak to get more information because at this point I'm not clear how to be for or against because I don't have the documents. And I am here with my mother, Gay Dwyer. We both own the property 508 Ortega Northwest. We are located west of the location of David Montoya's commercial site development plan. We are, our acre and 1.25 acre property sits directly next to his property. And we are both here, Julie Dwyer and Gay Dwyer.
So do you have any comments at all at this point or
Well, I'd like to let my mom speak. This is Gay.
Okay.
Good evening, and thank you.
Dwyer, please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Gay Dwyer, and the address is 508 Ortega Northwest, Albuquerque.
And Attorney Winter, please swear in the witness.
Ms. Dwyer, can you please raise your right hand?
I have.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Ms. Dwyer.
Thank you, Ms. Eby, and thank you very much for putting this together so that everybody can manage to get some time in on this.
We're trying.
I've had the property next to Mr. Montoya since 1998. And it is currently in my trust, and so it's under the Gay Dwyer Trust with Julie Dwyer and myself as the trustees. We have had issues in the past with what was considered to be the construction yard, and I actually went to the village in about 2005 and said, we have 18-wheelers sitting out in front of 508 Ortega, and it is cracking our wall because they arrive at 4 and 5 in the morning with their motors running while they're waiting to do something in Mr. Montoya's yard. And the village said that is not possible because there is no commercial entryway supposed to be on Ortega. Ortega is considered to be residential. And if you take a drive today down Ortega, you can start at 4th and come all the way to Rio Grande, and you will see that we have all tried very much to get our property into ship-shape order, and there are some very expensive homes on Ortega Northwest. And the Montoya property that backs onto us has been a bit of an issue because of the fact that it's a property where people come and go for the old things. People come and go because they're renting the upstairs. We haven't had any construction type stuff going on in the piece that Mr. Montoya is talking about in quite some time. And so I guess the question that I've got, because I really don't understand and I haven't seen the plat, is Mr. Montoya considering that he's going to use the Ortega Northwest as access to the property? And is he planning on building, for example, storage units for people to come and go with lighting and arms up and down and cars driving back and forth? I don't quite understand what he's doing because our master bedroom and second bedroom are on the east side of our house, which faces, those windows face Mr. Montoya's property. And so we've had an issue in the past with lights. We've had an issue in the past with coming and going of vehicles, trucks. And we've had problems with the fact that there has been just a lot of times there's just vehicles parked there that nobody comes and goes and does anything with. So it's a question on my part. We're sitting right now, if you look at Zillow, along with all the other houses, the house next to us that burned down and they're rebuilding, these are all now more than $350,000 homes. And this is something that we have a grave concern about, that Mr. Montoya, we don't have any problem with him accessing 4th Avenue. That's what 4th Avenue is all about, is the businesses for the village on 4th Avenue. But this is Ortega. And so those are some of my concerns. My daughter, Julie, would like to add to this because she's been taking care of the property while I've been seeking some medical treatment.
Julie Dwyer, would you like to add to that statement?
Yes, I would.
And Attorney Winter will swear you in.
Miss Julie, can you please raise your right hand?
I have.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know if there happens to be plan documents that could be emailed, but that would be, very valuable for us to be able to look at those plans. In listening to what the plan is at the beginning of this discussion, it sounds as though Mr. Montoya is looking at creating some type of storage facility, is what I'm understanding. So I guess the question is, because of how it was used a long time ago, was that there was a forklift, at least one I know of, that was being used, and it was being used at 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning. That is problematic for purposes of the value of our property. If it is that heavy equipment or vehicles are going to be coming and going at extended hours of time, even regular business hours, depending on the volume, that's going to be very problematic. So I am looking at this from the standpoint of what is the best use of that property, and how can it be to the biggest advantage to Los Ranchos as well as our neighborhood. And I know that Mr. Montoya wants to, also find that way. And I just would like to understand more about the details of this, because if it's going to be a high volume of traffic that are coming and going, or there's forklifts, or there's going to be storage of boats or trucks or RVs and all of this type of thing, that is going to devalue our $500,000 property that is in Los Ranchos. And I have myself put over $250,000, of my hard work and, money into paying for that property over all the years with my mom. And it's just, something, like anybody that has a property, they want it to be, something that's going to sustain its value. So I'm just hoping, whatever the decision may be regarding this, that it's not going to be something that's going to devalue the neighborhood, and certainly not devalue our property.
Okay. One of your questions was that you wanted to see the diagrams. These are all available on the village website under our this evening's hearing.
Okay, great. Thank you.
There are almost 75 pages of documents supporting this application. Director Justice, could you comment on the Ortega entrance issue?
Yes, so Commissioner Eby, commissioners, the property currently has 3 means of ingress and egress, one that is off of 4th Street and 2 that are off of Ortega. This does not appear to have changed since annexation into Los Ranchos. All of the old satellite images also seem to show this entrance, both entrances. And at this point, it is, while Ortega Road is used by primarily residences, it is not a private road for residences. It is a public road, and as such, as this property is along Ortega, it can get access off of Ortega. For what the applicant is intending to do, they're also hoping to have an addition. They're basically planning on an addition, an open side canopy and portal to the building.
And they plan to use it as a combination of office space and commercial storage, is what it says in your report. But we don't have any other detail.
So I would defer that answer to the applicant.
Okay. Before we hear from well, maybe this would be an appropriate time to, is there anyone else who wishes to speak in favor of this application? This was actually comments against it, so took that a little bit out of order, but is there anyone that wishes to speak in favor of it?
There is no one who's raised their hand.
Okay. Then could I ask the applicants, what is the intended use for the property once you make these changes? And you'll have to be added back into the meeting.
This is David. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, Mr. Montoya, go ahead.
Hold on 1 second. Here. Any rate, the building that is existing there, you say there's open. There is only one little side of it that is open that has a canopy. There, most of it is enclosed. And so, wait, I didn't hear that. So no, most of the building's enclosed, so I don't know what you're saying. There is a small area that is a kind of a canopy area on the west side, but most of it's enclosed. So the largest portion of this is all enclosed. But what it is a, we want to put more of our equipment that's parked outdoors right now. We want to put that inside. And I hope that people recognize that Ms. Dwyer did say that she was there in 2005 when I think the village said we had vacated and not used it, but she said that it had been used in 2005. So she also didn't say that she was against or for, but wanted to know what it is that we're doing. And what I want to do is take more equipment that's parked outside and keep it parked inside instead of it being outside. So that's the whole objective to this, to kind of enclose. We're adding to the, most of the addition is directly to the north of the building that's behind the fence. So the fence line essentially will remain the same that's there for the chain link fence line, but that line will now be enclosed building. So we're really confining ourselves to the area of the building. Ms. Dwyer, I hope Ms. Dwyer can hear me, I don't know. But at any rate, that the objective is to get most of this equipment that we possibly can indoors and enclosed.
Thank you, Mr. Montoya. And I'd like to thank Gay Dwyer and Julie Dwyer for your comments. And you can follow what we do this evening. And what we're being asked to do is approve the, let's see, the site plan development, or to recommend that it be approved by the Board of Trustees. So whatever we do will go to the Board of Trustees next, I believe. And you can go there after you study some of the other issues involved and voice your concerns at the Board of Trustees meeting, which will probably be in June, or is that right, Ms. Justice?
It will depend on when the final
June,
application is ready. So at this point, the deadline for the June meeting has passed. So it will likely be after
So it'll
June.
be June, July, or later. Okay. So are there any other questions from the commissioners?
Okay.
And if there are no further speakers in favor of or against the application, would the applicant like to respond to any of the comments beyond what you've already responded to? And if so, please keep it brief.
Okay. Yeah, one thing to know is that I don't want to have, we would not have any kind of storage for outdoor store, I mean, for, you know, like a rental, like a, what do they call those?
RV.
RV storage or any of that. We don't even own an RV. We don't want to have any of that kind of storage. We just want to put our construction equipment indoors is what we want to do. We want to enclose what we have. We have the trees next to the dryers, and we want to keep those trees alive and in good shape. And also, I'd like to point out something that I heard, at least we've heard now, that you have no evidence of it being run between 2001, you say, or 2002 and 2007, but now you've heard that it was run in 2005. But if we're non-conforming now, or it had been vacated, shouldn't that have been the village come out and said, hey, counterintelligence, David Montoya, Pam Montoya, you have been vacated. You no longer have a construction yard. Cease and desist. Shouldn't that have been done then? Because that's the period of time that you're saying that Mr. Park asked, Commissioner Park requested what period of time was not being used. And they're saying between 2002, 1 and 6. But now we've heard from another neighbor that it was 5, it was there. But Joseph then at counterintelligence was operating when it was vacated, apparently. And I just wondered if anybody had any comments about that, or it just somehow seems arbitrary. This seems arbitrary decision to say we now require you to come up with a non-conforming use.
Okay, are there any further comments from anyone in the audience or the applicants?
There is
All
from
right,
the
I'm gonna-
audience. There is from the audience.
Pardon me?
Stand by there. Ms. Dwyer would like to say something. Go ahead, Ms. Dwyer, if you can unmute yourself.
Thank you very much. I didn't mean to indicate, when I went to the village to
Excuse
complain-
me, is this the gate or?
Dwyer.
Okay, thank you.
When I went to the village to complain about the construction equipment making just making life pretty miserable at that time. Very shortly thereafter, and I assumed the village had done it, those trucks stopped coming. And we have had no trucks, no concrete trucks, no 18-wheeler trucks, no kind of construction stuff. So I don't wish to try to present the view that there was or was not construction going on. There wasn't construction going on on that property, maybe inside the building, but I can tell you that it wasn't going on outside. My question right now for the village to consider is, if Mr. Montoya is going to use his access off of Ortega, is this going to be storing the equipment? Are you going to be bringing it in the morning and leaving it at night, and it's going to go back and forth? And is there going to be lighting so that you know it's safe? There's a huge problem to begin with the trailer court that is directly south behind all of us. And so I feel like we're kind of surrounded by, this is not residential, really great residential. So Mr. Montoya runs a very fine business further down the street, and we would hope that this would be of the same caliber and would not detract from the cost that we have put into our property, nor the property taxes that we pay there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Dwyer. Okay, I think we are going to go on to the next step, which is there a motion?
Excuse me, sorry, commissioners. I have one comment I'd like to make in response to Mr. Montoya's last comment about just operating. So we do have a memorandum from 1996 that did say that the uses may remain on this property so long as they conform to the non-conforming use provisions of the zoning ordinance. And so this was established back in 1996. At that point, is page 98 of your packet. And also we were not aware of the business operating at this point, so we were not aware of any cessation of the use as we didn't know there was a business.
Okay, I don't think that the village is in the practice of giving notice about these types of things. I mean, it's the property owner's burden to, or duty to comply with the statutes as they're written. All right, is there a motion?
So, Madam Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Park.
So I'll make a motion to approve the, I'll make a motion to approve with the planning and zoning conditions numbers 2 through 10. Specifically, I'm excluding number 1 based upon the testimony of the Montoyas that the property was in continuous use and the non-conforming not vacated.
Thank you, Commissioner Park. Is there a second? I see Commissioner Berenson's mouth moving, but she's muted.
Sorry about that. Madam Chair, this is Rachel Berenson. I will second the motion as stated by Commissioner Park.
Okay. All right, the motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion on all these issues among the commissioners? And some of you are muted, so if you want to chime in, please unmute yourself. I have a problem with the continuous use. I'm just not convinced that the property owner was in continuous use of this as a contractor's yard all those years. I don't think it's the duty of the village to go around and give notice, you know, that a special use is being vacated. It just happens by operation of law. I don't see that it would be a great burden to apply for the conditional use as recommended by our planner. So as I'm not in favor of the motion as it's been made personally. Any other comments, discussion? All right, I'm going to call for.
Can I just say,
Mr.
hi, thanks. I appreciate your comments. I think they're well taken in a lot of respects. My only disagreement that I have is that the only evidence we have is that it was in continuous use. The absence of a license or a business permit is not evidence or indicative of whether or not it was in use. And the only evidence we have is the testimony of the Montoyas that say it was in fact in continuous use. And so I don't know that we have any evidence that says it wasn't. But I understand and I agree with your other points about we don't have to tell people. I mean, there's an obligation to be aware of what your legal responsibilities are. But that's why I made the motion to eliminate number 1.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, I'm going to call for a vote. Commissioner Christensen?
No.
Commissioner Benavides?
Yes.
Commissioner Park?
Yes.
Commissioner Seavey,
Yes, in favor.
Commissioner Gay,
No.
Commissioner Berenson,
Yay.
and Commissioner Eby, I vote no. The motion carries 4-3. And so I'm formally closing the application 4A, which is SDP 20-01. All right. Okay, our next item on the agenda is E, and it's ZMA, which stands for Zone Map Amendment 20-02. A request by Bacchus Trees Profit Sharing and Trust for a zone map amendment to change C1 zoning to R2 zoning as allowed by section 9.2.25 E8 for a property in the C1 zone in the 4th Street corridor and character area. The property is located at 401 Rail Road Northwest and is legally known as a portion of lots 3 and 4, except the westerly 225 feet. Justin James Jones addition within projected section 21 T11N R3E NMPM, Village of Los Ranchos, Bernalillo County, New Mexico. The property contains 3.3 acres more or less. The proposed zone change will be for 1.114 acres more or less. Director Justice, may we have your planning report, please?
Yes. The current lot in question is one property, but the zone change is for 2 future subdivided lots with this property. The proposed zone change is, again, for that 1.114 acres, more or less. This is going to be 2 future half-acre lots, lots 3 and 4 of subdivision S1901. So the concept of this zone change has already been reviewed and approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission and the Board of Trustees. This is just a formal process that must be followed at this point because lots 3 and 4 that will be created with this subdivision will now become dual zoned. And the residential uses that are proposed are not allowed in the C1 zone. So the lots will be zoned with this new subdivision, C1 on the east and R2 on the west. These lots have been seen before by the commission in the subdivision and the site development plan, both 19-01, and they meet the area requirements of the R2 zone. The final plat approval of the subdivision was approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission at the March 10th, 2020 regular meeting, and the final site development plan was approved by the Board of Trustees at the February 19th, 2020 regular meeting. There's currently a special use permit along the south side of Lot 3, which will be removed with the filing of the final subdivision plat, and all of these properties in the 4th Street character area. The surrounding land uses are a mix of C1 and R2. In terms of the zone change and zone map amendment, the following guidelines apply. It is in accordance with the comprehensive plan, the Village's 2035 master plan, and the property is in the 4th Street character area, which is a combination of residential and commercial uses and zoned properties. Lot 3 currently has a special use permit for a mobile home park that extends into both the C1 and the R2 zoning. So though a portion of this property is already zoned commercial, historically it's had residential uses. No adverse comments were received by the village during the original March public notice period, nor for this one. This will not be spot zoning with this zone map amendment. The properties to the west and partially to the north and south are zoned R2. And this area is a transition between commercial zoning along 4th Street and residential zoning to the west. The application for the zone change is warranted The approved subdivision and site development plan that you all saw had lot 3 and 4 zoned R2, and they meet the area requirements of R2 zoning. The proposal is for these lots to be single-family residential. The main issue here is that though C1 zoning allows for single-family residential uses, they're only allowed at a minimum density of 10 dwelling units per acre. And so at the density that was proposed with this subdivision, half the lot would not be conforming with the C1 use. So with this zone map amendment, it would also remove the dual zoning between these lots, which will allow for an easier application of the zoning that follows the lot lines rather than going through the lots. So support for this zone change is also within the master plan. And there's a typo on my recommendation. The department recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission forward a recommendation of approval of ZMA 20-02, a request for a zone map amendment to change C1 zoning to R2 zoning as allowed by section 9.2.25E8 for a property in the C1 zone in the 4th Street corridor and character area. With the following findings: that these properties are currently dual zoned with the new subdivision. The surrounding zones are a mix of residential and commercial, and the proposed subdivision and site development plan were approved with these two lots, lots 3 and 4, zoned R2. Again, no adverse comments were received, and no application to amend the zoning for this property has been filed within the last 12 months. And also public notice requirements have been met. And I stand for any questions.
What was the typo in your recommendation?
Commissioner Eby, commissioners, my original planning report just said that the department recommends approval. It did not say the department recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission forward a recommendation of approval, which is the action that would be taken at this point, as the Board of Trustees would be the final approval.
Okay. Thank you. Any of the commissioners have questions of Director Justice? Okay. Is the applicant present?
The applicant is present. Would you like me to bring them in?
Yes, please.
Mr. Newman, I will be promoting you to a panelist, and you can unmute your audio and your video. Mr. Newman? Mr. Newman, you are still muted.
Having technical difficulties. I'm not sure why I'm able to unmute.
Mr. Newman, are you present?
I am present.
It's very difficult to hear Mr. Newman.
I think he's got us on speaker. Hello, I'm here. Mr. Newman, if you've got us on speaker, can you pick up the phone? We can't hear you very well. I'm not on speaker. I'm not sure what, I apologize. I'm not sure what the issue is.
Kiko, can you help him with his audio?
I can. It might be a minute. If you guys want to continue to proceed for a second, I can try to do it.
Well, is Mr. Newman the applicant?
Hello?
Mr. Newman, I am
Yes,
going
he's
to,
the agent.
I'm going to send you a chat message with a phone number that you can call in if you prefer, if that would be
Can you
easier.
hear me now?
That's a little better.
Okay,
It
I
just
apologize.
try to speak up and go ahead
Okay,
and
I'm sorry. I'm not sure what's going on, but I'm here.
that's much better, actually. Go
Okay.
ahead and state your name and address for the record.
David Newman, 504 Mary's Way Northwest, 87107.
And Attorney Winter, please swear in Mr. Newman. You're muted. Ms. Winter, you're muted.
Mr. Newman,
Yes,
please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Newman.
I agree, and I'm here. I'm available for questions. I agree with Tiffany's recommendation, and I'm here for questions.
Okay. All right. Is there anyone of the commissioners that has a question for Mr. Newman at this time? Hearing none. Is there anyone present in the audience who wishes to speak in favor of this application?
There is nobody who has indicated they wish to speak at this time.
Okay, thank you. Then well, is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to the application?
There's nobody indicating they wish to speak in opposition at this time.
All right, thank you. Any further comments before we move on to the next phase? Okay, the floor is now closed for comments. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, this is Karen Christensen. I move to approve NZA-20-02 with regarding the Planning and Zoning Commission planning report as is.
All right, is there a second?
Yes, I would second that.
Okay. And now, is there any discussion among the commissioners about this application? Any comments? Any discussion? Well, I would just say that this is not spot zoning. It seems to be appropriate for the whole surrounding area is either C1 or R2. And the proposed subdivision and site development plan were approved. And the zone map amendment is supported by and conforms with the master plan, meets all the goals and objectives of the master plan. So I'm in favor of it. And so any other comments?
Sorry to interrupt, commissioners. Could we amend the motion to say that the commission would forward a recommendation of approval?
Yes.
Ms. Christensen, would you like to amend your motion to conform with the right language?
Yes. I move to approve ZMA 20-2.
Ms. Justice, could you give us the proper language here?
So just forward a recommendation of approval.
The motion is to forward a recommendation of approval of the zone map amendment to the Board of Directors.
The village trustees.
The village Board of Trustees.
Board of Trustees to change the
I need
section
to
from
second it
C1
again.
to R2.
What Karen said.
Okay.
Do you need another second on that then? Or are we good with my?
Yes, please.
So
We need
I
a
second
Okay.
the recommendation to forward it.
Seconded by Commissioner Berenson, Commissioner Benavides. Any further discussion? Okay, I'm going to call for a vote. Commissioner Christensen,
Yes.
Commissioner Benavides,
Yes.
Commissioner Park,
Yes.
Commissioner Seavey,
Yes.
Commissioner Day,
Yes.
Commissioner Berenson,
Yay.
and Commissioner Eby votes yay. Motion carries unanimously. And I will formally close the 4B application. And we will forward that to the Board of Trustees. All right, thank you. Now we'll move on to C. And this is V 20-5. Request by Michael and Trina Mccaffrey for a variance from section 9.2.7E to A2, side setback shall be 15 feet, to allow for side setbacks of 10 feet for a property in the A1 zone in the South Rio Grande character area. Property is located at 6025 Redondo Court Northwest, is legally known as Lot 38-A, Plat of lots 38-A and 38-9, Rob Lee Meadows, being a replat of lots 38 and 39 Rob Lee Meadows within the southwest quarter projected section 20, T11N R3E NMPM within the Elena Gallegos Grant, Village of Los Ranchos de Albuquerque, Bernalillo County, New Mexico, as filed in the office of the Bernalillo County Clerk on May 29, 2008. The property contains 0.5372 acres, more or less. Director Justice, may we have your planning report?
Yes. For this application, the applicants desire to construct a single-family residence on this property. This property currently has an existing 550 square foot structure that is within the rear and side setbacks, and it has a large mature cottonwood tree that's slightly offset from the center of the property. The applicants desire to keep the mature cottonwood and have designed their home around it. Before applying for a building permit, they're requesting a variance to the setbacks for the proposed residence that they have designed around the tree. In terms of surrounding land uses, all properties around this property are zoned A1 in the same South Rio Grande character area. For analysis, the applicants submitted in their letter and referenced a section of the code that only applies to properties within the North and South Rio Grande character areas for properties that are directly bordered by the Rio Grande Boulevard. So this subsection that they had referenced in their letter does not apply. The applicant's intent to preserve the cottonwood tree is evident in the location of their home design that highlights the cottonwood. And in terms of the variance, it does conform with the requirements of the variance. It's not contrary to the public interest. There's already a building within the rear and side setback that's legally non-conforming. And the applicants have also stated that the neighbors are in support. No adverse comment was received during the public comment period, either the original one in March and also the one for this meeting. The variance meets hardship criteria number 1, 5, and 6. For number 1, the primary physical characteristic of the land that is a constraining factor is the mature cottonwood tree and its location on the wider portion of the lot, which leaves the narrower portion remaining for development if they would like to preserve the tree. So with the 15-foot side setbacks, allowable development width varies between 70 and 45 feet in this narrower portion. And with these 10-foot setbacks, the allowable development width would be 80 and 55 feet. So another section of the code that can help support this is 9.2.7 E5, which says for very narrow, unusually small and or unusually shaped lots, one side yard setback can be reduced. In this case, the lot itself is a bit of an unusual shape, and it is also unusually narrow because of the constraining factor of the tree. The home appears to meet the building height requirements, so this would be allowed in this section. And the reduction of one side's side setback to less than 10 would basically, it could mean 5 feet on one side, which would have the same effect as this variance for a total of 20-foot setbacks, one 15 feet and one 5 feet. For hardship criteria number 5, the variance for the setbacks is only for the proposed home design that's in the application, and the conditions of approval do affirm that the variance is going to be tied to the proposed hardship of the cottonwood. In criteria number 6, relief is justifiable in accordance with the goals and policies of the master plan. This is the strongest basis for this variance application, as their desire to preserve the tree is not one that's explicitly supported in the code, but it is explicitly supported in the master plan, both in terms of the cottonwood tree and as its contribution to the bosque tree canopy. This is evident in several sections: vision statement, overall village goals, village form goal, environment goal, and the residential development goal. And also, the use of the premises is not changing, and the property is zoned for single-family residential, and the proposed building would also be for single-family residential use. So with that, the department recommends approval of V20-05 for a variance from section 9.2.7 E2A2. Side setback shall be 15 feet to allow for side setbacks of 10 feet for property in the A1 zone in the South Rio Grande character area, with the following conditions and findings. Condition 1, any changes or encroachments into this 10-foot side setbacks or the front or rear setbacks will require another variance. And condition number 2, the cottonwood tree cannot be removed between the approval of this variance and construction of the proposed single-family residence unless the tree endangers the health, safety, or welfare of the property owners or neighbors. With the findings that it is in conformance with the goals and policies of the master plan, it's not contrary to the public interest, the use of the premises is not changing, and this application meets hardship criteria number 1, 5, and 6. No prior application for a variance has been submitted on this property in the prior 6 months, and public notice requirements have been met. With that, I stand for any questions.
Yes, I do have.
Commissioner Benavides has a question of Planner Justice.
Tiffany, you mentioned that the cottonwood tree was really not a factor for a variance, but there are other hardship factors. Yet you have it in there as a condition that the cottonwood tree cannot be removed. Why is that?
Commissioner Benavides, commissioners, the cottonwood tree is a factor of the variance. It is a factor in hardship criteria number 1, that the parcel is exceptional by reason of physical characteristics of the land that existed when the provisions were adopted, or by which were created by natural forces or by government action. So in this case, the physical characteristic of the land is the cottonwood tree. And the presence of the cottonwood is the primary support from the master plan. And it also is the basis for basically the fact that the developable area of the lot, by keeping the tree, is narrower than the rest of the lot. The tree is positioned on a wider portion of the lot, which allows for easier development, but because of its positioning, if they do intend to preserve it, it means that the portion that's left available for development is narrower than.
Okay, I just thought you argued that the irregular shape of the lot and the narrow portion in front was really a factor for hardship all by itself. But okay, but you also say the cottonwood is part of that as well, apparently. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Any other questions of Director Justice from the commissioners? Commissioner Gay?
Tiffany, why did you only make the condition that the tree cannot be removed between the time of the approval of the variance and the construction of the single family residence? It's a pretty short timeline for, technically, that as soon as they're done with the construction, they could cut that tree down, which I'm sure they're not going to do, but it seems like it's the wording is kind of open.
Right. So the idea of this second condition is that they could not remove the tree and then basically build a house somewhere else, build a larger house, but still have these, the variance for the setbacks. The reason why it's such a short time span is because we acknowledge that the tree is likely to die someday. And by putting a specific time frame on it, we don't know how long it's going to live. And there could be a circumstance where after the home is built, the tree dies relatively quickly and it needs to be removed in some way so that it is not a hazard to the property or adjacent properties. I am open to changing the language of that, but that is the intent behind that condition.
Yeah, I understand the intent, but you already have the language in there that endangered the health, safety, or welfare, so it seems kind of it's one or the other. And I think I finally understand what a hardship to a cottonwood tree is now. That was a joke, Tiffany.
I mean, it's not hardwood, it's hardship. Any other questions of Director Justice? Yes, Commissioner Seavey.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Director Justice, on page 130 of 158, we have a site plan. On the site plan, there's a dimension going from the corner of the house to the center of this cottonwood in question. It's not legible. I'm just kind of curious, how far away are we from the tree? Just out of curiosity.
I will defer that question to the applicant. It looks relatively close, but it's a covered porch.
I see.
It's the closest. Also, in reference to Commissioner Gay's question about the conditions, that language could also be amended to say that the cottonwood tree cannot be removed unless the tree endangers the health, safety, or welfare of the property owners or neighbors.
Thank you.
Any other questions of Director Justice? I have some questions. My first question is that I understand that this used to be part of the parcel to the south, and it's now separate from it. And it's only a little over half an acre in a A1 zone. So how is it that any building can go on this lot.
So Commissioner Eby, commissioners, the applicants have designed their home around the Cottonwood and with these setbacks in mind, and it is a decently sized single family residence. The diagram on page 130 does show an example of some setbacks. If the Cottonwood were not present on the property, there would still be room essentially for this house slightly reconfigured with the setbacks, with the exception of 25 rear that isn't shown.
That's not my question. The question is, the size of the lot is just over half an acre. It's not an acre. So how is it that they can build a residence on a lot that's less than an acre? I mean, was this subdivided in the past? And if so, how is this developable at all now?
So the property was subdivided, as mentioned in the legal description. And with that subdivision, the zoning still stayed with the properties. I'm not exactly sure. Okay, so during this time, the property was subdivided with a substandard lot size. However, a home still can be built on this property, even though it is less than 1 acre, because it's still single family residential. In theory, it's 1 house per 1 acre. However, we have many lots in Los Ranchos that are less than 1 acre that do have a house on them. So this property would also be able to have 1 house per less than 1 acre, but still 1 house. And this subdivision plat was approved by the village in 2008. And there was not a variance for the substandard lot size. So I'm not quite sure what happened there, but this is an official subdivided lot.
Okay, I don't understand how it can be subdivided into less than an acre and then a house put on it. Then I have another question about the provision that you cited that allows one side to be 10 feet or less, but only one side. And you're saying that, you know, you do the math and it's kind of the same. But when I'm looking at page, the site plan on page 130, and this doesn't show the building in back, but I'm just trying to picture how a fire truck would get through past this building if there were a fire in that back building, and wondering if that isn't the reason why that provision is in our code, you know, that if it's a narrow lot, that you can decrease one side to less than 10 feet, but it doesn't say that you can decrease both.
So
could you comment on the fire access issue?
So in terms of fire access, I believe that the fire truck may not be able to get back there. However, a fire hose is likely to be able to. And I don't believe the requirement for a 15-foot side setback is for fire safety because we have R3 residential zones, and those also have side setbacks of 10 feet. So in theory, those lots also may not be able to get a fire truck back there. However, I believe a fire hose would be able to, but I'm not a firefighter, so I cannot confirm that. But it's the requirement for the side setback is not for fire access.
Okay. And then I went to look at this property yesterday, and there actually, I saw 3 large cottonwoods on the property. And, you know, one of them is the one that's shown on this site plan, but there's 2 others that are closer to the road. Is there, do you know what's going to happen to those trees or the large pine trees that are on the side?
I will need to defer to the
applicant. We'll ask
applicant.
the applicant. Okay. All right. I don't have any other questions. Does any of the other commissioners have any questions of Director Justice? Okay. Is the applicant here, present?
They are present, and I just promoted them. Please unmute your microphone and your video.
Hello, McCaffreys are here. Please, and I'd ask you to speak one at a time. Whoever's going to speak first, please state your name and address for the record.
Yes, Michael McCaffrey, and I'm at 1904 Sol Rio Court, Albuquerque.
Okay. Attorney Winter, please swear in Mr. McCaffrey.
Just one at a time, or do you want me to do both since we have a video?
I guess we could do both at the same time.
Okay. Mr. and Mrs. McCaffrey, can you please raise your right hands? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
We do.
I do.
Thank you.
Would you like to speak about your application?
Yes, good evening, commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. I thought that Ms. Justice did a very nice job in summarizing our concerns to you. Several points have been raised. I'd like to go through them one by one if I could real quick. First of all, the plans that we've had designed are with that cottonwood tree in the very center of the property in mind. So the house itself is going to have very large picture windows in the back, a 3-panel sliding patio door, and all of this is designed to focus on that tree because we love it so much and we want to hang on to it. So the idea of us building the house and then cutting the tree down is simply not going to happen. We wouldn't have gone to the trouble of designing the house the way we wanted to if that was the case. There was a point made about what happens if that 550 square foot structure in the back catches fire. The lot to the west of us has a very wide alleyway. So in the event that fire hoses could not be extended from the cul-de-sac to the back, fire trucks could easily get up that alleyway, and there is no obstruction from that street. So that is not an issue. And that is one of the 3 homeowners who have met with us and are in agreement with what we're trying to do with this lot. There was another point brought up about other trees. We're blessed with this lot because it has so many mature trees on it. There is a cottonwood in the very front, and as much as we would like to hang on to that, we've got 2 issues. One, it's going to be in the driveway, but even before that, we could have tried to figure out a way around that, but we had become owners of this lot for all of 30 days when an extremely large limb broke away from that tree, snapped down, smashed the fence, and almost took out a car to our neighbors to the south. So we're a little concerned about that tree and its health. It was brought up before. These cottonwoods don't last forever. We certainly understand that. So if one of them has to go, it's probably going to have to be that tree. And we don't want to have to do that. But again, we're certainly concerned about its health with that limb giving way.
Okay, Mrs. McCaffrey, do you want to add anything to that?
Commissioner Irby, you said that you went by and you saw that there are 3 cottonwoods, and that's true. The main cottonwood, which is the focal point of our backyard, there's another one adjacent to it, which will remain as part of the canopy for the backyard. And then in terms of the pines, we talked with, ironically, Baca Trees regarding those pines because they are not healthy. There are too many from what we understand in that grove. I believe there are 8. So they do need to be thinned out to maintain their health. Other than that, there's a few smaller trees that may have to be removed, but one is a mulberry, which I understand are kind of a nuisance, and I could be wrong on that. And we don't even know what the other one is, and it's a very messy tree as well. But all the remaining trees, we're hoping to preserve.
Okay. Any questions by the commissioners for the applicants? Commissioner Benavides?
Yeah, so for the applicant, so you were concerned that the cottonwood tree in the front had lost a limb during a windy day, but you're not concerned about the other cottonwood tree doing the same thing because it seems to be very close to your house.
The cottonwood actually in the front, it didn't fall on a windy day.
Okay.
It just gave way. And in looking at the tree, you can see that there's some type of, I'm not a tree expert, I can't say, but there's something not right that happened in it. We've had Baca Trees look at some of the other trees, and without them coming up into the canopy, we're assuming that tree is sound. They've been trimmed. We've been watering them, taking care of them. So
okay.
Our hope is to preserve it.
Okay.
In addition to that, the neighbors to the northeast, the Cohens, the Curtises, they've lived there now for over 30 years. And I talked to Stephen in depth about his home. He has many trees in and around his house, and we've talked at length about that. And in driving around and getting to know the village, this is common amongst so many of the homes around here. So we're just going to go with the thought that we're going to hope the tree stays up. If the limb comes down, it comes down. We understand that there's some inherent risk involved, but we understand it doesn't happen every day. It's kind of a rarity. So again, there's a little bit of fingers crossed and good insurance, but I think we're going to be okay.
Okay. Yeah, I live with big cottonwood trees, and on windy days, I kind of hold my breath sometimes. That's it.
Any other questions from other commissioners?
Yes, Madam Chair. I do have a question. I just wanted to follow up that I asked Director Justice, but you might know on your site plan, there's a dimension going from the corner of what looks like your covered patio to the center of the tree in question. And I'm just curious what dimension that is. How far away is the tree from your proposed structure?
We utilized RM Designs and Ron Montoya. He came out and did some measurements on that. We explained to him what we were looking to do in terms of hanging onto that tree. And from what we have been able to see, we're going to be far enough away from the base of that tree, I think 15 feet plus, where we feel we're, part of that's going to be patio, covered patio, but we feel like we're going to be okay with that. In terms of the exact numbers, I'm sorry, I don't have that.
That's fine. I think it's great that you're trying to preserve this tree. It's wonderful to see that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions of the applicants? Is there anyone present who wishes to speak in favor of this application? Anyone in favor of the application?
We have no one indicating they're interested to speak.
Okay, then.
So, sorry to interrupt, Chairman or Chair Eby. I have 2 written comments that are in favor that I would like to read out during this time. And we also have somebody who did indicate that they would like to speak in favor, actually. So I'll let Kiko speak before I read out these comments.
Yeah, Jack, I cannot pronounce your last name, so I'm adding you into the meeting. If you can unmute your video and audio, please.
Okay, here I am.
Okay, please state your name and address for the record.
Jack Gerndt, 6021 Redondo Court, Northwest.
Okay, Attorney Winter, could you please swear in Mr. Jack Gerndt?
Mr. Gerndt, please raise your right hand.
Got it?
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Gerndt.
I just wanted to give my 2 cents worth on not having an empty lot next door. I believe Stephen on the other side of the property had told Mike that he pretty much said the same thing. He said that lot's been empty for so many years. It obviously used to be part of our property. And what I'm told back in '08, when the market was starting to go bad, the people that used to own this house had trouble selling it, and that's why it was divided. And the village drew the lines, I guess. That's why we have the fence that we have in the odd-shaped lot. But we were thinking of buying it back, but it's just too much work. I got enough work to do. Don't need another lot to take care of. So I may help Mike take care of his, but they're really good people. They're really nice people, and they mean well. And I had to call them when the branch fell. I thought somebody hit our house. It hit the ground so hard. But it was a nice calm day, and it just fell off. It was a branch that was pretty much 90 degrees from the trunk, straight out over to our driveway. And I think it just was too heavy. You know, there was no rain, no wind, no nothing. It just fell. So we're definitely in favor of the variance. It obviously doesn't affect us. They're 15 feet away from us, but I don't know why my picture isn't up there, but that's all right. I don't know if there's any questions for me, but that's the way I feel
Well,
about it.
Mr. Gerndt, they're asking for a variance, so they'll be only 10 feet away from you.
No,
You're
the
still
10
okay with that, right?
No, the 10 feet is on the other side. The 10 feet is on the north side of the lot, northeast side.
Director Justice, could you clarify that?
So the application is for both the north and south property lines to have 10-foot side setbacks.
Oh, I didn't even know that. Well, I don't care.
You just want someone there.
Yeah, and it's 5 feet less farther to have to walk.
Okay. Thank you very much for your comments.
Sure.
And Director Justice, you have a couple written comments to read into the record for us.
Yes. Actually, one of the comments was from Mr. Gerndt, so and his wife. So that I will not read out, as he has already stated his written comment. Essentially, he's in favor of the application. The other one is from Stephen Curtis at 6029 Redondo Court Northwest. Regarding item number V20-05, Michael and Trina Mccaffrey variance. Ladies and gentlemen, this letter is submitted in support of the application for variance by Mr. and Mrs. Mccaffrey, which will be heard at the May 12th, 2020 regular meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission. My wife and I are the owners of the property just to the east of the McCaffrey's property, namely 6029 Redondo Court Northwest. During the 34 years in which I have lived at 6029 Redondo Court Northwest, I have seen several attempts to build on the lot now owned by the McCaffreys. Due to the narrowness of the lot, building on that lot has been a challenge. When our home was built in 1985, we were careful to preserve as many of the cottonwoods as possible. We only had to take down one medium-sized tree and two small ones. We are happy that Michael and Trina are committed to saving the big cottonwood in the middle of their lot. I am sure their home will be a valuable addition to the village. We welcome Michael and Trina Mccaffrey as neighbors and support their plans for construction of a home. The requested variance is minimal, and we think that their home would make a fine addition to our neighborhood. If you have any questions of my wife and me, please do not hesitate to contact us. Very truly yours, Stephen P. Curtis.
All right, thank you, Director Justice. And are there any other comments from any audience members that we haven't heard from yet?
We see no one indicating they wish to talk.
There are no others. Okay, the floor is now closed for comments. Is there a motion?
Yes, I would like to make a motion to approve V20-5 for a variance lowering the setback from 15 to 10 feet with only condition number 1, which may be a moot point to them, but to me, it just makes sense to put the house there. So no condition number 2, only condition number 1.
Is there a second?
I didn't get that.
You didn't hear me?
Sorry, my other computer thought I was asking her a question. Oh. She was asking me to clarify it. No, I didn't hear a second yet.
Madam Chair, this is Rachel Behrens, and I'll second that motion.
Okay, motion has been made and seconded. Are there any points of discussion, comments among the commissioners?
Sorry, Commissioner Benavides, why do you want to remove condition 2 entirely?
Well,
logic.
I think it's a moot point because if they really value that cottonwood, they're going to leave it there anyway. But to me, the best part of the yard is what's behind the house, in my opinion, and where they're positioning the house just makes sense to me, regardless of whether there's a cottonwood tree there. So I think it's just up to them. They may want to reconsider because the cottonwood, it could be dangerously close to their house. And I have cottonwoods. I love them. They're beautiful cottonwoods. They are dangerously close to my house as well. So it's up to them. It's their choice.
That's not the question. I'm just wondering why you want to remove that condition.
Because it's not important to me. That's why I think I would approve it with or without the cottonwood being there. So it makes sense where they want to position their house. Currently, it makes sense whether there's a cottonwood tree there or not.
Great.
Any other comments?
For Director Justice, does the removal of condition 2 change anything with hardship and the ability to apply for this?
So Commissioner Seavey, commissioners, it could still be argued that this lot is still unusually shaped. And that is one of, I guess, that is an allowance with 9.2.7 E5 that would allow the reduction of one of the side yard setbacks to less than 10 feet. And it only, you can have either a narrow lot, unusually small lot, or unusually shaped lot in that regard. So hardship number 1 could still apply considering the unusual shape of the lot if the commission considers this unusual.
Thank you, Director Justice.
It's just that the back part of the lot isn't all that narrow. It's only narrow towards the front. And I think their argument is that they want to put it towards the front to preserve the cottonwood. So it seems to me that that condition should probably still be in there. Any other comments? Commissioner Christensen?
Chairperson, I agree with you that I don't know if I can say this, that I would vote for approval with the conditions as they are in the planning and zoning report.
Okay, well, that would require an amendment.
Oh, okay.
So Commissioner Benavides, do you want to press on with your motion? We can take a vote on your motion, and if it passes, fine. If it doesn't, we could go to an amendment.
I mean, it's likely to be a moot point, but let's just go ahead and take a vote, and then we'll just do another motion if it doesn't pass.
Any other comments before we take a vote? Commissioner Seavey, did you?
If it does not pass, can another motion be made?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Just want to make sure.
Any other comments or questions? Points of clarification? All right. So there's been a motion made and seconded to approve the variance with only one of the two conditions suggested or recommended in the planner's report. I'm going to call for a roll call vote. Commissioner Christensen?
Nay.
Commissioner Benavides?
Yes.
Commissioner Park?
Yes.
Commissioner Seavey?
Nay.
Commissioner Gay?
Nay.
Commissioner Berenson?
Yay.
And Commissioner Eby is going to vote no. So the motion does not carry 4-3. So is there another motion?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Christensen?
Yes, ma'am. I move to approve the request for, sorry, I don't have the number.
V-2005.
V-2005 per the planning and zoning report with the two conditions.
Okay. Is there a second?
I second it.
Okay. The motion has been made by Commissioner Christensen and seconded by Commissioner Benavides for approval of the variance with the two conditions set out in the planner's report. Any discussion on this motion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. Commissioner Christensen?
Yay.
Commissioner Benavides?
Yay.
Was that a yay?
Yes. Yes or yay.
Okay. Sounded like nay. Commissioner Park?
Yes.
Commissioner Seavey?
Yay.
Commissioner Gay?
Yes.
Commissioner Berenson?
Yay.
And Commissioner Eby, I vote yes. The motion carries unanimously this time. All right. I'm going to formally close the hearing on the 4C application. let the record show the hearing, that item 4A, the request by Michael and Trina Mccaffrey for a variance is formally closed. Thank you for appearing, Mr. and Mrs. McCaffrey. I forgot to do that in the other two. All right. So we will now move on to the next item, which is old business. There is no old business. Moving right along to new business. There is no new business. So the next item is the Planning Department report. Director Justice, will you please give us your report?
Commissioners, so this department report is for both April and May, as we didn't have the April meeting. A lot of our work has been related to COVID-19 for the past couple of months. We were working primarily to set up remotely, phone, email, online applications. We allow physical items that need to be dropped off in a drop-off box outside of Village Hall. We're continuing with public hearing items, as you can see right now, and we're still accepting applications. And animal control and code enforcement continue to be on call and patrolled daily. We've been updating the village website and Facebook page with resources and information on COVID-19. And we have several related pages for information and resources for individuals and businesses. Jennifer Schilling continues to process building permits and business registrations. She's begun to reorganize the digital business records, and the quarterly business report is attached. You'll notice that there's several new businesses that have opened, one that has closed. We're likely to see a little bit of a delay in terms of the impacts of COVID-19 with our business licenses and registrations, but so far, not too bad. She has also been managing the Village magazine and will be working with Mayor Lopez and Administrator Simon to make some changes and updates to the magazine. So keep an eye out for that in the coming issues. Dominic Tomba is reorganizing the code enforcement database. He continues to write letters and visit properties to have them come into compliance. He's also now compiling case progress for a either monthly or quarterly report, which is attached. I've been working on the department budget for the next fiscal year, including possibly adding geographic information systems software to the department's tools. I'm working on a white paper for short-term rentals. And again, the public comment period is still ongoing for that, even though it had officially closed back in February. The village website's Acequia's and Ditches page has been updated to recognize the newly formed Acequia Ditch Committee, which is a citizen volunteer committee spearheaded by village resident and Planning and Zoning Commissioner Dan Gay. The committee was created in support of the 2035 master plan, and it's specifically its section on the ditch irrigation system. The focus is on education, residents its resources, and on-the-ground action to preserve and support the ditch system. And I stand for any questions.
Any questions of Director Justice? So Jennifer taking over the newsletter is new, right?
Yes. So in the past couple of months, we have also had a little bit of staff changes, and temporarily we didn't have somebody at the front desk, and they usually handle the magazine. So in the interim, Jennifer took over the magazine to make sure that it would at least be continued, and she's done so well with it that she's going to be continuing with the magazine.
She's going to go into journalism now.
Yes.
And I appreciated getting the report from Dominic Tomba on all the citations and court cases. And yes, Commissioner Christensen.
May I ask some questions about that? And again, Tiffany, I don't know if you'll be able to answer these because this is Dominic's report, but I agree. I love this report, but will we be finding out more information regarding, I saw that there was like municipal court, one dark sky arraignment. We'll find out eventually what the status of that is. In April, it says Rio Grande Boulevard area, and it says investigation by, I'm assuming that's New Mexico. I don't know what ED stands for. Know that terminology. And I was just wondering, you know, are we going to find out more information about what this investigation was, or we're just going to get summary reports like this?
So Commissioner Christensen, commissioners, the intent of this report is to be a summary report of the progress. We have more information on these individual properties and the progress on them. However, in the interest of somewhat maintaining property owner privacy, we're trying to keep it a little bit vague at this point. I will pass on the terminology point to Dominic, that NMED is the Environment Department.
Okay.
And the municipal court does post when cases are heard before them. So we're able to see that outside of the code enforcement report as well.
Okay. Are those available on the website? Can you go into the website and get more detail on some of these items?
Commissioner Eby, commissioners, in terms of court cases, I don't believe so. And for these other cases, these are not posted on the village website.
Okay. I also wanted to commend Commissioner Gay for his role with the ditch Acequia committee. That's a new committee that he's spearheading, and I think it's a great idea. How's that going, Dan?
You know, we hit a little snag a couple months ago.
What was that?
Outbreak slowed it down a little bit, but it's good. We have given us plenty of time to get ready. So if anybody wants to know more about that, just give me a call or email me tomorrow, and I will give you all the information you could possibly want. There is a small blurb on the website, but it's not very descriptive. But we have a article coming out in the Village Vision, the next edition, that has a little detail. So.
Can you briefly just say what's your objective?
Not briefly.
Okay.
Well, I could do that tomorrow.
I'll look at it on the website then. Thanks.
Just give me a call tomorrow, Gil. I'm more than happy to.
Okay.
It'll probably take longer than most of the 9 screens here want to hang around for.
Yep, I agree.
Maybe you could have a Zoom call for your new committee.
I thought about
Zoom
it.
meeting.
I'd actually have to have more than one commission member to have a Zoom meeting. So.
Okay. So the next, are there any other comments or questions for Director Justice? Okay, moving right along to our Commissioners' informal discussion. Any announcements, stories, reports, information that commissioners would like to share with each other here?
I just want to say I think tonight went really well.
Good job, Lynn.
Yeah, it was kind of strange, not being in the room and just having that vibe of, when a hearing comes to an end, I kind of forgot to thank the people that testified, except right at the end there. Anyway, try to get better at it. But yeah, it's a new thing.
You need an electronic gavel.
Yeah, we talked about whether I should have a real gavel. I almost went over to the village hall to borrow the gavel, but they have to use it tomorrow night, so decided to do without. Anything else? Okay, the next item on the agenda is adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll move to adjourn.
Commissioner Seavey, is there a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Gay. Commissioner Seavey moved to adjourn. Commissioner Gay seconded the motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Unmute yourselves. All opposed say nay. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you all very much. It's been a pleasure. It's nice to see you all.
It is.
In the two dimensions.
Good meeting.
Yeah, it's
guys.
different.
Good meeting.
Take care.
Thank
We don't usually get to see each other's faces, you know, we're just side by side. Okay, good night, everyone.
Good night.
Aye.
Thank you, Tiffany.